For all of you self-claimed nerds, this is a perfect video for you to watch so you can see how CoolSculpting is highly effective and actually gets rid of those stubborn fat cells in a lasting way. So this graphic right here is really showing the journey of the fat cell once we utilize CoolSculpting. So on that upper left photo, all those white dots are your fat cells. And what you can see in that second photo is just a more vivid picture of what all those cells look like, just kind of at their core. And in the third picture on the top right, you can see what happens to those fat cells as we start to apply cold. Something that's really important to take note of is that a fat cell is very, very intolerant of the cold, where other cells, tissue, and nerves are not. So that's why we're able to use cold to negatively impact a fat cell, but leave everything else unharmed. In that bottom left picture, those blue circles represent the fat cells that were brought to a certain temperature for a certain amount of time and that are really being set up to die through a natural process which is called apoptosis. So essentially what happens is those macrophages are going to engulf those fat cells that are set up to die, and then they're going to carry them out of their body. In those last two photos, you can definitely see that transition of the thickness layer of the fat cells beginning to reduce as those fat cells that were frozen are actually flushing out of the body. 20 to 25% of the fat cells are going to flush out of the area that we treat every time we do CoolSculpting, and you can visually see in that bottom right photo that that fat layer and that thickness has absolutely diminished in an undeniable way. So let's take a look at a fat cell under a microscope. This photo is representing fat cells at a baseline of 30 degrees Celsius. On the left-hand side, this is an image of a fat cell, and on the right-hand side, it's the image of the fat cell, but it's cross-polarized light, because as we transition through these slides, you are going to be able to see how those fat cells are negatively impacted as we apply cooling. So now we're at 10 degrees Celsius. We can start to see that some crystallization is happening, but nothing significant at this point. When we go to 3 degrees Celsius, you can start to see that more of those cells have that crystallization, which again is just an indication that the fat cell is being negatively impacted and it's going to be set up for apoptosis, which again is just a natural death inside the body, and eventually those macrophages are going to engulf those fat cells and carry them out of your body. At 0 degrees, you can certainly start seeing that not only more fat cells are being negatively damaged, but the damage within each fat cell is actually growing as well, which just really ensures that we're getting you that wonderful and undeniable result. Here's at negative 3 degrees Celsius, negative 6 degrees Celsius, and then finally at negative 9 degrees Celsius. So this image for me is really exciting because visually you can absolutely see that the fat cells are damaged, not only in a large number, but there's also a lot of crystallization happening within each cell, which essentially just means that that apoptosis process is going to start, and those cells are going to be flushed out of the body over the course of 2 to 4 months. Here's another nice visual just to really show that undeniable reduction that's going to happen in the fat layer. So on the left-hand side, you can see that the fat layer was just over 2 centimeters. 90 days after a CoolSculpting treatment, you can see that fat layer has reduced to 1.4 centimeters. So clearly, there was a measurable difference in the thickness of that fat layer before CoolSculpting and then 90 days after. This is just another image that displays the reduction of the fat cell. So in that center there, you can see that the fat layer has reduced to 1 centimeter, where on the outer it was 2 centimeters. That means that the CoolSculpting was done in the center of this fat pad. This is actually on a pig, not a human, because of course we would not want to leave you with an uneven or unnatural looking reduction, but I think this is another great visual to show that the fat layer is actually being reduced. We can't wait to have you into Bodify. Hopefully this gave you a nice scientific overview of how and why CoolSculpting works. We love it. It gets rid of 20 to 25% of the fat cells in the area we treat, and once those fat cells are gone, they are gone for good.